The Resident Evil franchise has produced some of the most terrifying bioweapons in gaming history. Viruses that melt flesh, reanimate corpses, and turn entire cities into graveyards. But the very first entry on our ranked list, it was designed to cure cancer. Today I'm breaking down and ranking every single virus in the Resident Evil franchise, from least deadly to most deadly, starting with one you've never heard of, TJCCC-203, a cancer cure. In Resident Evil, sitting right there in the official timeline documents, buried where nobody would ever find it, TJCCC-203 scores a 28 out of 100 on our deadliness scale, making it the least threatening entry in the entire franchise. And honestly, it barely qualifies as a threat at all. This virus was never designed to kill anyone. It was designed to save lives. A therapeutic agent built to fight cancer, not create monsters. Here's the thing. TJCCC-203 has never appeared in a single Resident Evil game. Not one. It exists only in supplemental timeline materials, making it the most obscure virus in the entire series by a massive margin. No outbreaks, no BOWs, no body count, just a quiet little footnote proving that somewhere inside the most violent bioweapon franchise in gaming history, somebody tried to do something good. But if you think the list stays this wholesome, you're in for a rough ride. Veronica virus. This is one of those entries where honesty matters more than hype. The Veronica virus scores a 33 out of 100 on our deadliness scale, making it the second least deadly virus on this entire list. And part of that low score comes from the fact that there's barely enough canonical information about it to fill a paragraph. Here's what we know. It's tied to the Ashford family. It traces back to the progenitor lineage, and in some analyses it's treated as a distinct branch separate from T. Veronica. But its standalone mechanics? Never fully documented. Capcom essentially treated this virus like connective tissue, a bridge that explains how the Veronica branch feeds into later, far more dangerous creations, and that's actually the most interesting thing about it. When a franchise as lore-heavy as Resident Evil can't be bothered to flesh out an entire virus, that tells you exactly where it sits on the priority list, but the lineage it connects to? That's a completely different story. Ancient virus. Here's something that should blow your mind. The ancient virus is potentially millions of years old. It predates every single virus on this list by an almost incomprehensible margin. And yet, it scores a 42 out of 100 on our deadliness ranking. That's not a typo. The oldest known mutagen in the entire Resident Evil timeline is also one of the least dangerous in terms of measurable impact. Its primary role is narrative. It's linked to Africa origin, mutation histories, and the progenitor lineage, meaning it helps explain why the progenitor virus exists at all. It places the entire bioweapon timeline inside a much longer evolutionary story, stretching back millions of years. But here's the problem. There is almost zero documented outbreak data. No confirmed hosts, no transmission profile, no mortality numbers. It exists as an ancestor, not a weapon. And speaking of ancestors, the virus it eventually gave rise to is one of the most important organisms in franchise history, norovirus. Norovirus scores a 48 out of 100, which edges out SARS coronavirus by a hair. And yes, that is a sentence that would be alarming in literally any other context. Here's the thing about norovirus. In the real world, this is the virus that ruins cruise ships. It's the stomach bug, the thing that shuts down a carnival buffet for 3 days. But apparently, Umbrella's scientists looked at this pathogen and thought, yeah, we can use that. In Resident Evil lore, norovirus is listed as one of several real-world viruses used to produce or augment the franchise's engineered mutagens. That's it. That's the entire role. No standalone outbreak, no BOWs, no named victims, zero dramatic moments. It's purely an ingredient in someone else's bioweapon recipe. So somewhere in an Umbrella lab, a scientist in a hazmat suit was carefully pipetting norovirus into a beaker, contributing to a world-ending experiment, and that same virus was simultaneously making a guy on a Royal Caribbean ship wish he'd never touched the shrimp cocktail. But if you thought norovirus was a strange inclusion, wait until you see the next real-world virus Umbrella decided to weaponize. SARS coronavirus. Here's one that's going to sound weird the second I say it. Yes, the SARS coronavirus exists in Resident Evil lore. No, there's no outbreak. No, there are no BWs created from it. No, you never encounter it in any game. So why is it here? Because Umbrella used it. SARS appears in the franchise as a component virus, raw biological material fed into mutagenic development programs. That's it. It's an ingredient, not a weapon. Think of it like flour in a recipe. Nobody's scared of flour, but it's in the bread that kills you. Now here's the thing. In the real world, SARS has a case fatality rate of roughly 10%. That's genuinely terrifying for a respiratory virus. But its ranking here, 46 out of 100, isn't about real-world danger. danger. It's about what Capcom actually did with it in canon, which is basically nothing. 0 named creatures, 0 documented outbreaks, 0 gameplay presence. Just a line in the lore files confirming it was part of the toolkit. But if you think these background viruses are underwhelming, we're about to leave the minor leagues entirely. Ebola virus. Here's where things get a little weird. Ebola is a real virus, like a real actual virus that exists in our world right now. And in Resident Evil lore, Umbrella's scientists used it as a building block, an ingredient in their mutagenic recipes. In reality, Ebola kills between 25% and 90% of everyone it infects depending on the strain. Hemorrhagic fever, organ failure, internal bleeding so severe it's considered one of the most terrifying pathogens on the planet. And Capcom looked at that and said, yeah, we can use that as a starter kit. Ebola never gets its own canonical outbreak in the games. No Ebola level, no Ebola boss fight. It exists purely as a referenced component, something Umbrella pulled off the shelf because they needed its cellular destruction properties to make their engineered viruses nastier. The most lethal real pathogen available, treated like a spice in the recipe. That earns it a 45 out of 100. This is the last real-world entry on our list. Every virus from here on out is purely fictional, purely engineered, and built to make Ebola look quaint, starting with one that Umbrella designed to do something nobody expected. Progenitor virus. Every virus we've talked about so far is a descendant, every single one. The T virus, the G virus, the C virus, Ouroboros. All of them trace back to this. The progenitor virus is the root of the entire Resident Evil bioweapon family tree, and it wasn't created in a lab. It was found in nature. Deep in West Africa, there's a rare flower called the Stairway to the Sun. Beautiful name for something that would eventually destroy millions of lives. The progenitor virus occurs naturally within this flower, and when Umbrella discovered it, they immediately recognized its mutagenic potential. This wasn't a weapon yet. It was a blueprint, a biological foundation that Umbrella's scientists could twist, refine, and weaponize into every nightmare the franchise has ever produced. Here's the thing, though. In its natural state, the progenitor virus isn't a world-ending threat. It's not airborne. It's not spreading through cities. It required Umbrella's engineering to become truly catastrophic, which is exactly why it scores a 52 out of 100. Middle of the pack. That feels wrong for the virus that started everything, but the ranking reflects what it actually does, not what its children became. Think of it this way. Progenitor is the seed. Everything above it on this list is what grew from that seed after humans decided to play God with it. And the next virus on our list, it took that seed and turned it into something with a body count that makes progenitor look like a common cold. NE-T virus. You know Mr. X, the giant in the trench coat who stalks you through the Raccoon City Police Department, punching through walls and making you question every door you open. But most people have zero idea what actually created him. Meet the NET virus. This wasn't some accidental mutation. The NET was engineered by Umbrella with a specific goal: build smarter, stronger bioweapons. The standard T virus could produce basic tyrants, but Umbrella wanted BOWs that could follow orders, think tactically, and operate as controllable battlefield weapon. The NET was their answer, and it's directly responsible for the entire T-103 production line, better known as Mr. X. Here's the thing though, despite creating one of the franchise's most terrifying enemies, the NET score is just 38 out of 100 on our deadliness ranking. That sounds low, but it makes sense. The NET was never designed to start a pandemic. It has almost zero spread potential. You can't catch it from a bite. It doesn't go airborne. It exists purely to make monsters in a lab, and that caps its threat ceiling significantly. But if a purpose-built weapon virus scoring this low surprises you, wait until you see what a virus designed to literally erase humanity can do. Tough Phobos virus. Most viruses on this list don't care how you feel. They infect, they mutate, they kill. T-Phobos is different. This thing is literally powered by your emotions. T-Phobos is a fear-reactive variant of the T-virus lineage, and its mechanism is one of the most creative concepts Capcom has ever put into a game. The virus sits dormant inside a host's body, and the more afraid that host becomes, the faster the mutation accelerates. Panic literally transforms you. Your own fear response becomes a biological feedback loop that rewrites your DNA in real time. It shows up in Resident Evil Revelations 2, where it's used as a control mechanism. Infected subjects are kept docile as long as they suppress their fear. Stay calm, stay human, lose your composure, and the virus eats you alive from the inside out. That makes it as much a psychological weapon as a biological one. T-Phobos scores a 60 out of 100 on our deadliness scale. There's limited spread data and zero documented mass outbreaks, which keeps the score moderate. But the concept alone is arguably the most psychologically unsettling entry in the entire franchise. Every other virus attacks your body. This one weaponizes your mind. And speaking of viruses that never got their moment in the spotlight, the next one was designed to do something no other entry on this list even attempted: A virus. The A virus was designed to do one thing: kill every human being on the planet, and somehow it still scores a 40 out of 100. Let me explain why. Glenn Arias, a bioterrorist operating completely outside of Umbrella's infrastructure, engineered this virus with 3 distinct variants. Each variant covered a different infection vector, meaning the A virus was built from the ground up to maximize human extinction. 3 variants, 3 ways to spread, 1 goal: total annihilation of the species. So why does it rank so low? Because we barely know anything about it. The A virus appears in Resident Evil Vendetta, a CG animated film, not a mainline game, and that distinction matters. Viruses from the core series get detailed files, lore documents, outbreak data, confirmed casualties. The A virus gets a movie runtime and not much else. The genocidal intent is confirmed. The actual results? Almost zero canonical documentation on transmission rates, outbreak scale, or body count. Here's the thing: a virus designed to end humanity that we know almost nothing about is its own kind of terrifying. But in a ranking based on documented capability, ambition alone doesn't earn points. Capcom really didn't develop this one, and the score reflects that gap between what the A virus wanted to do and what we can actually prove it did. But if you think an underdeveloped extinction weapon is frustrating, wait until you meet a virus that activates based on something you can't control: your own fear. T. Veronica virus. Picture this: a 12-year-old genius, one of the smartest minds Umbrella ever produced, creates a brand new virus by combining the progenitor virus with an ancient retrovirus extracted from queen ant DNA. Then she injects herself with it. Then she climbs into a cryogenic pod and goes to sleep for 15 years. That's not a hypothetical. That's exactly what Alexia Ashford did. Here's why. T. Veronica is so absurdly aggressive that any conscious host is destroyed by it almost immediately. The virus rewrites your DNA so fast and so violently that your mind can't survive the process. The only way to achieve symbiosis, to actually gain the extraordinary physical abilities the ant DNA component makes possible, is to slow your entire body to near-death levels and let the virus integrate over more than a decade. Alexia understood this, so she sacrificed 15 years of her life on a gamble that she'd wake up superhuman. And it worked. She emerged with abilities that made her one of the most dangerous beings in the entire franchise. But anyone who skipped the cryo sleep, they weren't so lucky. Steve Burnside is the perfect example. Injected with T. Veronica without the slow integration process, he mutated violently and uncontrollably, losing his mind entirely. The virus didn't enhance him, it consumed him. That's what makes T. Veronica so fascinating. It's not just a weapon, it's a 15-year commitment with zero guarantee of survival, and the only person patient enough to see it through was a child. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now. Las Plagas. Every virus on this list so far kills its host. Las Plagas doesn't. It takes over their mind and turns them into a weapon while they're still breathing. Las Plagas isn't a virus at all. It's a parasitic organism, and it represents the biggest conceptual shift in the entire Resident Evil franchise. Once inside the body through spores or ingested eggs, the parasite invades the nervous system, overrides autonomous behavior, and hands full control to whoever's pulling the strings. The Ganados you fight in Resident Evil 4 aren't zombies. They're conscious functioning people whose bodies no longer belong to them, and it gets worse with every variant. Type 2 and 3 Plagas show increasing sophistication in host manipulation, but Type 4 is where things go apocalyptic. A Type 4 Plaga can control other BOWs like Lickers, turning a single infected host into the commander of an entire biological army. That's not an infection. That's a military structure. Here's where the real threat escalates. During RE4, Ada Wong extracted a Plaga sample and delivered it directly to Albert Wesker. His plan? Worldwide infection. Not to kill people, but to control them. That mind control capability at global scale is what pushes Las Plagas to a 62 out of 100, above viruses with significantly higher raw lethality. Because a virus that kills you is dangerous. A parasite that makes you kill for someone else is something far worse. But if mind control sounds bad, wait until you see what the next virus does to the ocean itself. T. Abies virus. Picture a luxury cruise ship. Chandeliers swinging, ballrooms echoing, the whole thing drifting through open water with zero contact to the outside world. Now fill it with some of the most aggressive mutations the Resident Evil franchise has ever produced. That's the Queen Zenobia, and that's exactly what the T. Abies virus turned it into. The T. Abies virus scores a 66 out of 100 on our deadliness scale, and the reason comes down to one word: hybridization. Researchers took the Abies virus, a deep-sea pathogen with terrifyingly fast mutation rates and grafted T-virus genes directly onto it. The result was something that infected faster and hit harder than either parent virus alone. The Abyss base gave it that relentless deep ocean mutation speed. The T-virus genetics expanded the host range far beyond marine organisms, meaning it could now tear through anything biological, not just fish. The bioterrorist group Il Veltro deployed it aboard the Queen Zenobia in Resident Evil Revelations, and the marine setting wasn't just for atmosphere. It directly reflected the Abyss virus's origins in the crushing depths of the ocean. Here's the thing though, what makes T-Abyss genuinely scary isn't just what it does, it's what we don't know about stopping it. There is virtually zero reliable containment data for this specific strain. No documented vaccine, no proven countermeasure. A virus engineered purely for speed and aggression with nothing confirmed to shut it down is a nightmare scenario, but if a hybrid virus with no known cure sounds bad, wait until you hear about the pure strain it was built from. Abyss virus, a 99.76% blood transmission rate. Let that satisfying, terrifying number sink in for a second. The Abyss virus doesn't need to be airborne. It doesn't need to be engineered into a weapon. It just needs to touch your blood, and you're done. That single statistic makes it one of the most efficiently spreading pathogens in the entire Resident Evil franchise. But here's the thing that actually makes the Abyss virus scarier than most entries on this list. Nobody made it. Umbrella didn't cook this up in a lab. No rogue scientist spent decades perfecting it. The Abyss virus is naturally occurring, a marine origin pathogen that evolved in deep ocean environments completely on its own. It was sitting at the bottom of the ocean, in crushing pressure and total darkness, mutating and perfecting itself long before any corporation ever dreamed of bioweapon. And when it crosses into surface organisms, the results are rapid and catastrophic. The mutations it produces are adapted to extreme deep sea conditions, so when those same properties hit a normal biological system, the host essentially gets rewritten at a speed that most engineered viruses can't match, scoring a 70 out of 100 on our Deadliness scale. The Abyss virus earns its place not through some villain's master plan, but through millions of years of natural selection in one of the most hostile environments on Earth. That's the part that should keep you up at night. Every other virus on this list exists because someone decided to play God. The Abyss virus was already out there, waiting, and it didn't need anyone's help to become a nightmare. But if a naturally occurring deep-sea pathogen unsettles you, wait until you see what happens when someone actually weaponizes it. Ouroboros. Every virus on this list was built to infect. Ouroboros was built to judge. This is Albert Wesker's masterpiece. Derived from the progenitor virus and refined using Jill Valentine's T-virus antibodies to reduce its raw toxicity, Ouroboros does something no other pathogen in this franchise attempts. It sorts humanity into two categories, the worthy and the unworthy, and it does it with zero mercy. Here's how it works. If your DNA is compatible, the virus adapts to your body, reshapes your genetics, and grants you extraordinary physical abilities. You evolve, but if your DNA is incompatible, and this is the vast majority of the human population, black cysts erupt across your body and consume you from the outside in. You don't mutate. You don't turn into a zombie. You just die horribly. There is no middle ground. Evolve or be destroyed. And Wesker's plan wasn't to use this on a battlefield. He wanted to launch it globally via missile strike, blanketing the entire planet. Ouroboros wasn't a weapon of war. It was forced evolution on a species-wide scale. Billions dead, a handful of enhanced survivors, and Wesker sitting at the top as a self-appointed god of the new world. The virus scores a 78 out of 100 on our deadliness scale, and it's potentially extinct after the events of Resident Evil 5. Not because anyone cured it. The samples were simply lost. That's the only thing that stopped it. But if Ouroboros sounds like the peak of what Resident Evil has to offer, the top 3 viruses on this list are about to prove you wrong. G-Virus. Most Resident Evil viruses create a monster. The G-Virus creates a monster that never stops becoming something worse. William Birkin spent his entire career building this thing, and what he produced is arguably the most terrifying piece of biological engineering in the entire franchise. The G-Virus is the first artificial virus to fully tap the potential of the progenitor virus, and it doesn't just surpass the T-Virus in regenerative capability. It makes the T-Virus look like a rough draft. Here's what separates the G-Virus from everything else on this list. When the T-Virus infects someone, you get a zombie, a licker, a tyrant. The mutation stabilizes into a form and stays there. The G-Virus doesn't do that. Infection drives continuous, uncontrolled mutation. Hosts progress through stages, G1 through G5, and each stage is more powerful and less recognizably human than the last. host. There is no ceiling. The host just keeps evolving until there's nothing left that even resembles a person. But the truly alien part is the G embryo. The G virus can produce embryos that the host implants into other organisms, creating a reproductive cycle that spreads infection through a completely different vector than bites or airborne spores. And if the recipient has incompatible DNA, the embryo doesn't bond with them. It hatches inside them and tears its way out. That's one of the most viscerally disturbing infection outcomes in the entire series, and it's not even the saddest part of this virus's story. The G virus traces back to Lisa Trevor, an Umbrella test subject who survived repeated experimental infections that should have killed her dozens of times over. Her unique antibodies gave Birkin the key insight he needed to isolate the G virus. She was a prisoner, a child when the experiment started, and her suffering became the foundation for one of the deadliest bioweapons ever created. But if the G virus is this devastating at an individual level, wait until you see what happens when someone engineers a virus that combines its mutation potential with the T. veronica's power scaling. C-virus. Take everything dangerous about the T. veronica virus and the G virus, smash them together, and you get something that honestly shouldn't exist. The C-virus is a second-generation hybrid, and it inherited the worst properties of two of the most dangerous viruses we've already covered. It scores an 85 out of 100, and once you understand what it does, you'll wonder why it isn't number one. The C virus is RNA-based and attacks red blood cells directly, deteriorating them to produce infected humans, called JAVO. Here's the thing about JAVO. They're not zombies. They retain enough cognitive function to use weapons, coordinate tactics, and work together. That alone makes them exponentially more dangerous than anything the T virus ever produced. But the real nightmare is the chrysalis mechanic. When a JAVO takes enough damage in combat, it doesn't just die. It enters a chrysalis state, a cocoon, and emerges as a completely different, more powerful mutation. The virus literally uses the damage you deal to its hosts as fuel for their next evolution. Every bullet you fire is just accelerating the problem. That's a genuinely terrifying concept for a bioweapon. And transmission? Forget bites. The C virus spreads through injection or aerosolized clouds, which dramatically expands how it can be deployed at scale. On top of the JAVO and chrysalis pathways, it can also revive dead tissue and reanimate corpses. That's 3 separate infection outcomes from a single virus. No other virus on this list covers that much ground. The anti-C vaccine does exist, developed from Jake Muller's antibodies, but it only works if deployed before the chrysalis stage completes, creating a treatment window so narrow that large-scale containment becomes nearly impossible. The C virus covers more bases than anything we've discussed so far, but somehow it still isn't the deadliest virus in Resident Evil. T virus. This is the one that's going to make people angry. Scoring 88 out of 100, the T virus isn't just the most iconic virus in Resident Evil, it's the most deadly. And I know exactly what you're thinking. The G virus mutates harder. The C virus creates chrysalid nightmares. Ouroboros was literally designed to end civilization. How does the original zombie virus beat all of them? Because deadliness isn't about spectacle. It's about results. The T virus was engineered by Umbrella from the progenitor virus, and it became the foundation of the entire franchise's bioweapon ecosystem. Zombies, lickers, tyrants, dozens of BOWs across over 25 years of games. Every single one traces back to this thing. But that's legacy, not lethality. Here's where it actually wins. The T virus has the widest confirmed host range in the franchise. It infects humans, animals, insects, plants. It doesn't care, and its transmission model is self-sustaining. One bite creates another carrier, and that carrier bites someone else, and the chain never stops. No laboratory needed, no delivery system, no cult-performing rituals, just teeth. The Raccoon City incident is the benchmark. A single city, partially contained, and the only way to stop it was a nuclear strike. The virus spread to that scale through ordinary zombie bites in under a week. Think about that. The United States government looked at every option available and decided the only answer was to erase an entire city from the map, and Umbrella never stopped refining it. The Epsilon strain, the T103 Tyrant line, Mr. X, decades of in-universe research and iteration made the T-virus the most actively developed bioweapon in the series. Nothing else even comes close in terms of documented deployment. The counterintuitive lesson of this entire ranking is simple. The most dangerous virus isn't the one with the most extreme mutations or the most ambitious design. It's the one that spreads the easiest, has been deployed the most, and has the highest confirmed body count. The G-virus is scarier in a lab. Ouroboros is scarier in theory, but the T-virus is scarier scarier in practice because it already won multiple times across multiple games, and they needed a nuke to even slow it down. That's why it sits at number 1. Not because it's the flashiest, because when you measure actual damage done, nothing else in this franchise comes close. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.